Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Geostrategic Podcast. Thank you so much for watching or listening to the podcast. China just blocked a massive stretch of airspace for 40 days with no explanation, and military analysts say this could signal a major shift in global power. The restricted zone stretches from the Yellow Sea to the East China Sea, directly impacting routes near Japan, South Korea, and U.S. forces. So, what is China preparing for? In this video, we break down what this move really means, why experts are concerned, and whether this is a warning shot for a larger regional conflict. Before we dive in, hit like, subscribe, and share to stay ahead of global developments. And I want to hear from you. Is this just military training or something much bigger? Drop your opinion in the comments. Your perspective matters, and this is a discussion you don't want to miss.
Yeah, you really, really don't want to miss this one because the geostrategic implications we're looking at here are just massive.
They really are. And, to get us started, I want you to imagine a completely bizarre scenario for a second. Imagine you wake up and your neighbor has suddenly barricaded the street in front of your house.
I would be pretty annoyed.
Right. But they haven't just blocked the asphalt. They've blocked it from the ground, past the power lines, all the way up into space. And they leave this invisible barricade up for over a month.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's intense.
And the wildest part, when you ask them what they're doing behind that barricade, they absolutely refuse to tell you. Total silence. And that scenario is basically what we are unpacking today with the latest info regarding this unprecedented offshore airspace embargo.
Exactly. And, if that scenario makes you feel kind of uneasy, well, that is exactly the intended psychological effect. In global power dynamics right now, especially in East Asia, silence is becoming the loudest signal of all.
It's like a tactical weapon.
It really is. When a major military refuses to broadcast its intentions, it forces every neighboring country to scramble and guess. It puts the silent actor entirely in the driver's seat.
Okay, so before we get into the strategy, the why of it all, we really need to map out what is actually happening. Because when I was reviewing the latest updates, the sheer scale of this just really threw me.
Oh, the scale is staggering.
Right. So we are looking at a restricted zone that runs continuously from March 27th to May 6th. That's 40 consecutive days. And the geographic footprint over the ocean is actually larger than the entire main island of Taiwan.
Yeah, let that sink in for a second. Bigger than Taiwan.
It's huge. And the altitude restriction is the part that really catches my eye. It extends from the surface of the Earth literally to infinity.
Surface to infinity, yeah.
To make this happen, authorities issued a notice to air missions, a NOTAM, north and south of Shanghai.
Right, and to put that in perspective, a NOTAM is basically the aviation equivalent of police caution tape. It's a binding mandate. They are legally forcing all international civil aviation, cargo flights, everyone, to physically reroute around this invisible wall in the sky.
But usually don't they give a reason for that? Like, hey, we're doing live fire exercises or something.
Exactly. Normally you issue it because you're testing a ballistic missile or doing something hazardous, but this time, zero justification.
No announced exercises, just an infinite wall. But, okay, let me play devil's advocate for a second. I mean, militaries restrict airspace all the time for routine training, right? Fighter jets need room. So is this really that out of the ordinary?
Well, that distinction between just routine training and actual strategic signaling, exactly what military planners are looking at. Over the past 18 months, China actually has done this at least 4 times.
Okay, so it is a tool they use somewhat regularly.
They do, yeah. But the context has drastically changed. Those previous closures, they usually lasted like 3 days max. And more importantly, they were heavily publicized.
Oh, so they wanted people to know.
Right. They'd issue a statement saying, hey, we're doing joint naval maneuvers. They gave shipping companies and airlines the courtesy of knowing what was up.
So a 3-day window with a loud press release is basically a showcase. It's performative.
Exactly. It's a highly controlled demonstration. But a 40-day booking with no warning. Analysts are looking at this not as a quick show of force, but as a sustained posture of preparedness.
It's like the difference between running a 20-minute fire drill at work versus, bolting the office door shut for a month without telling anyone what's happening.
That's a great analogy. One is a test, the other is essentially a hostage situation for the region's airspace. They're creating this massive, shielded laboratory to test their military over a long period.
Which brings us to the location. Because the geography of this laboratory tells a totally different story than the usual news cycle. Whenever we talk about East Asian security, it's always about the Taiwan Strait.
Almost exclusively, yeah.
But this 40-day zone is hundreds of kilometers away from Taiwan. It faces South Korea in the Yellow Sea and pushes down toward Japanese islands in the East China Sea.
Right, the Ryukyu chain. And that location is highly deliberate. Taiwanese security officials themselves have said this isn't directly about Taiwan.
So it's like everyone is obsessively watching the front door Taiwan while they are quietly changing the locks on the back gate.
Oh, I love that. Changing the locks on the back gate.
Yeah.
And doing that forces Japan and South Korea to fundamentally rethink their security. Beijing is sending a clear signal here. Any future conflict is not going to be isolated to just one theater.
It spills over instantly.
Exactly. It becomes a multi-theater regional war on day one. They are actively occupying the exact transit routes that U.S., Japanese, or South Korean forces would need to use to intervene in a crisis.
Wow. So if it's not an immediate threat to Taiwan, what are they actually doing inside that empty sky for 40 days? Let's talk about the mechanics of this marathon military. You said surface to infinity. What does that actually look like? Are they just flying jets in circles?
Well, if they were just flying in circles, it'd be incredibly inefficient. But surface to infinity allows for stacked operations.
Stacked operations? Like what?
Think of it like building a vertical infrastructure.
Yeah.
On the ground floor or the ocean surface, you have naval destroyers coordinating with anti-submarine aircraft.
Okay, so that's the base layer.
Right. Then move up a level. You've got continuous combat air patrols, fighter jets running interception simulations. Higher up, you bring in the heavy logistics like massive aerial refueling tankers.
Oh, so the fighters never even have to land.
Exactly. And at the very top, in the stratosphere, you have high-altitude drones and electronic warfare aircraft managing the whole battle space below them.
So it's basically a multi-story factory for modern warfare. And running that for 40 days, you just can't test that kind of endurance in a 3-day drill.
You really can't. Most militaries know how to sprint, right? But very few know how to run a marathon. This embargo lets them test exactly that. How do you rotate fighter squadrons seamlessly? How do ground crews handle 2,047 flight ops without massive equipment failure?
You're testing the fatigue of the machines and the humans all at once.
Precisely. And because of this invisible wall, nobody outside can see how successful those logistical tests are.
And we have to talk about the timing, too, because it feels incredibly opportunistic. While they are running this 40-day marathon, the U.S. and the rest of the world are heavily distracted by the instability in the Middle East.
Oh, absolutely. Distraction is a powerful geopolitical tool.
It almost feels like they looked at the news cycle and decided to take a 40-day free trial of controlling Northeast Asian airspace just to see what they could get away with.
Yeah, Beijing is very adept at recognizing those power vacuums. When U.S. aircraft carriers and intelligence are focused on the Middle East, it gives Chinese military planners incredible freedom.
But even if they're just getting some scheduling flexibility, doing it in total silence is a deliberate choice.
It's the cornerstone of a strategy called reasonable denial.
But wait, how do you maintain reasonable denial when you've blocked off a chunk of ocean the size of a European country? That's not subtle.
Well, you weaponize the ambiguity. Because they didn't officially announce a military operation, they don't trigger the massive diplomatic crisis that usually happens. If they announce a massive war game simulating cutting off Japan, ambassadors get recalled, U.S. carrier groups move.
Right. But if you just file some boring aviation paperwork and call it an airspace reservation...
Exactly. The international response is totally muted. It's basically a bureaucratic shield.
But keeping those planes stacked in the sky isn't just a military flex. It's actively an economic weapon. And this is where the real-world impact hits. We are seeing a shift to what analysts are calling silent sanctions.
Yes. This is where military logistics turn into psychological and economic warfare. They're moving away from dramatic headline-grabbing drills and moving toward these silent, grinding sanctions in the near seas.
And it's so erratic. Like earlier this year, the news showed Chinese flights around Taiwan halting for 10 days, complete quiet, and then boom, resuming in massive numbers with no explanation.
Which keeps everyone completely off balance.
Right. I've heard it called a tax on paranoia. It's like someone holding a fist near your face and saying, I'm not touching you, but you still have to flinch every single time.
And that tax is devastating. When a planner in Tokyo or Seoul sees that activity, they can't just assume it's a routine drill. They have to prepare for the worst.
Which means they have to scramble their own jets to go look.
Exactly. You have to launch your own early warning aircraft, put naval vessels on high alert, And maintaining that hair-trigger readiness for 40 days, the financial implications are astronomical.
Let's break down that cost, because scrambling a jet is not just paying for jet fuel.
Oh, not at all. Operating an F-15 or F-35 costs tens of thousands of dollars for a single flight hour. And for every hour in the sky, you need multiple hours of ground maintenance, mechanics, parts, avionics.
Plus, you're burning through the actual lifespan of the airframe, right?
Exactly. You are physically degrading your Air Force's hardware.
Yeah.
Analysts estimate that matching this 40-day silent sanction could easily cost regional militaries upwards of $50 million US.
$50 million, or roughly 190 million ringgit, just to monitor an empty patch of sky because your neighbor won't tell you what they're doing.
That is the literal price of uncertainty. It's a highly sophisticated war of attrition. Beijing bleeds the defense budgets of U.S. allies without firing a single shot.
It's brilliant in a very chilling way. So bringing this all together, what looks like boring aviation paperwork is actually a masterclass in modern geopolitical maneuvering. It's a 40-day stress test, a vertical factory of warfare, draining allied resources while the world is distracted.
And that is why this matters so much. Shifts in global power don't happen with dramatic declarations of war anymore. The map is being redrawn quietly through erratic scheduling and silent sanctions.
It completely reframes how we think about conflict, which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to chew on. If ambiguity and silence are the new ways to exert dominance, how does an alliance successfully counter a threat that technically isn't breaking any rules but is simply quietly occupying the sky?
That really is the defining strategic puzzle of our time, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Thank you so much for joining us and listening to this deep dive. If you found this breakdown valuable, keep questioning the quiet spaces in the news, because that is usually where the real story is happening. Be sure to check out our other podcasts for more geostrategic analysis. We'll see you on the next deep dive.